How are you doing today? Welcome. My name is Maggie and I am an English teacher. Hello, how are you doing today? I hope everyone had a good week. I'm doing pretty well myself, but yeah, there's not that much time left in the year and I have to finish my Christmas shopping. So I think today I'm going to go Christmas shopping. Have any of you been Christmas shopping before? Well, that was that was not what I meant to say. I meant, have you been Christmas shopping yet this year? I had a brain fart. Yeah, a brain fart is like my brain stopped working for a second. This happens a lot for me on lives because if I talk and read at the same time, I say what I read instead of what I was going to say. So I have that problem when I um multitask, I think. Although I read something about how attention works, and apparently we can't really multitask. What you're doing when you multitask is you're changing your attention back and forth. You're not like really focusing on the two things at the same time, unless you're doing something that is automatic and doesn't require any like real thinking. So that's why if you multitask a lot at work, you probably feel very mentally exhausted. And it's because you're not really doing two things at the same time. You're actually changing your attention like back and forth, which is more exhausting. A brain fart is if you guys are ever in the middle of speaking and you just say the wrong thing, or you forget what you were talking about, or something doesn't occur to you, that is a brain fart. This is very informal, so I would never use this like in a job interview unless the person is um yeah, I would not use this in a job interview, but because a fart, in case you don't know, I don't know how to describe this. It's like when you have gas in your stomach and you have flatulence. So if you eat a lot of beans and then your belly, I don't know, and then like this is a fart. Um, that's a fart. I'm sick with the flu. Oh my goodness. What a bummer. I started to feel myself getting a little bit sick this week and I thought, not again. But I think it was allergies now that I think about it. Okay, I can get us started with the topic today. The topic is not farting. The topic is actually compound adjectives. So I will get us started with the class. This is a picture that I showed to you guys on my story, and I think it's a good demonstration. I saw a man-eating alligator. The first one is a man-eating alligator. The second one is I saw a man eating alligator. So clearly the hyphen makes a difference in meaning. What is the difference if we look at these two images? What is the difference between a man-eating alligator and a man-eating alligator? What is the difference in meaning that we have? What do we think exactly? If I said, no, don't go there, I saw a man-eating alligator, and you interpreted it as a man eating alligator, maybe you'll say, that's not a problem for me, I'll still go there. And then you end up in the belly of the alligator. Exactly. So with the first one, a man-eating alligator, we're using multiple words to describe the noun. Man-eating is an adjective. What type of alligator is this alligator? It is a man-eating alligator. You could also have a broccoli-eating alligator or a, I don't know, chicken-eating alligator. The first one implies that the alligator is the one eating the human, whereas, I would say, whereas the other one is the opposite. Yes, exactly. So the other one is just simply the verb. But the hyphen, I would say the pronunciation is the same, but there's a little bit of a difference in the emphasis in the sentence. So with the hyphen, we say, I saw a man-eating alligator. Man-eating. We kind of squish it together more because it's one idea. I saw a man-eating alligator. The other one is like, I saw a man eating alligator. I would say maybe that doesn't sound like a big difference, but the first one, I would say it a little bit more together, man eating instead of man eating. It's not an important difference though. I'm just trying to look for something. I'm splitting hairs, as they say. When there's not a real difference between something, I'm splitting hairs. This is the explanation. I saw a man-eating alligator. Here I'm describing the alligator, that it is one that eats people. Sorry, lots of brain farts today. What type of alligator? A man-eating alligator. In the second one, I'm talking about how I saw a man who was eating alligator, not describing the alligator. This is something cool and fun that we can do in English that in my experience, I have not seen another language that has it this exact way. So when we want to describe something, we can get very creative. We can have multiple words before the thing that we're describing. And there are some that are very common, like the ones I have here, but we can also kind of create our own versions of those. Compound adjectives often use a hyphen when they come before a noun, like brand new car. But when they are after the noun, like the car is brand new, there's no hyphen. So before a noun is going to be brand new car when we're basically stacking a bunch of words before the car. But after, it's not used. These are some really common examples of ones that you can see in different contexts. If you can think of maybe another way that you can use these, feel free to comment your example. The first one is a see-through bag. So a see-through bag is a bag that you can see through. If you can think of anything else that you can see through, for example, you could have a see-through shower curtain. There are some shower curtains that are see-through and others that are not see-through. So you have a design or something else. Related to the alligator, are you referring to the previous page? An alligator? Was your question if it should say an alligator? That's a good question. So here it's not necessary to say an because when we're talking about meat, we can use meat in the sense of the animal, the entire animal, and that would be countable. But we can also talk about the substance of the meat without counting it, like without saying one alligator. It's the same thing with any type of meat, like with chicken. I saw a man eating a chicken. It's like he was eating the whole animal, but I saw a man eating chicken. He was eating like parts of chicken. So that's possible with any type of meat. If you're talking about like the whole animal or just like pieces of the animal in general, you don't need to say it in a countable way. Yeah, that's a good question. So both would be correct, but have like a different meaning. Okay, so we have a see-through bag. You can also say a well-made coat. Something can be well-made, it can be poorly made. In this case, we are using, it's like an adverb and an adjective together. Something can be well-made, poorly made. We could also say a brand new phone. See-through is the same as transparent. Yes, exactly. It's another way to say see-through. But I would say it's a little bit more casual. For example, if I went to the mall and I was looking at clothes and there was a shirt that was really thin and not a very good material, so you could see the light through the shirt, it would be more common for me to say, oh, this is see-through, instead of, oh, this is transparent. It would be a little bit more common to use in those sort of informal situations, but it's like a synonym of transparent. A high maintenance customer. That's a good one. High maintenance is a person who requires a lot of things from you. So a high maintenance person could say, like, if you invite a high maintenance person to your house, this person is like, I want water, but I don't drink water from the tap. But it needs to be ice cold. No, but I only drink my water in a specific type of cup. And I want to sit on your couch, but I don't like the feeling of the couch. So I want you to put a cushion down for me, but I don't like your cushions. Like this sort of demanding person would be high maintenance. On the other hand, if you had a friend who came over and they're like, yeah, I don't care. We'll do anything. I don't mind what we do today. I am really easy go. That person could be low maintenance. A well-behaved child. Exactly. A well-behaved child is a good one. Ill-bred instead of ill-raised. I don't know. Personally, I don't use either of those. Is it referring to like an animal? For me, I would use bred more in the context of animals, but I don't know if you've seen that somewhere specifically. A low effort joke. Yeah, so a low effort joke would be a joke where the person did not try very hard. They just told you a really easy, casual joke that came to mind. That would be the idea with low effort. You could also have like a low effort presentation. You don't put that much time or really try very hard with the presentation. So, for example, you could say the comedian did not have a very good routine. He just stood up in front of the crowd and gave us some low effort jokes. My impression seemed real. Is it similar to a dad joke? Yeah. I would say a dad joke could be a good example of an low effort joke. I would I would say that. I would say for a badly behaved child, or an ill-mannered child, badly raised, poorly raised. I would use one of those maybe. Then we have a high quality product and last minute plans. So remember, when we order the sentence like, we made plans at the last minute, that's not going to have a hyphen. But if we say it, we made last minute plans, and last minute is a phrase describing the plans, we put hyphens to connect it to make like one big adjective that's describing the next word. So that's what we do in English to make it more clear that these words are describing the next word and that they're all together. Exactly. A well-known writer. That's another good example. So I have here different situations when it's common to use these hyphenated words. One situation that I think is probably one of the most important ones that hopefully you can remember from today is whenever we're using a number. And in this case, we always combine it with a singular noun. So I'll explain that because this is different from in some languages where you do not use a singular noun, you use a plural noun. I like what you said, low effort job is my favorite. So, for example, we could say a 7-day trip. Now, we have two options. We could say the trip was 7 days long, and we're going to have days plural if we're saying it like that. But when we're making it a hyphenated compound adjective like this, a 7-day, it's not plural. So we do not In general, in English, we do not make our adjectives plural. I do not say like the intelligence men or the funnies people, right? So whenever we're having an adjective before a noun, we're not going to change it based on the number in that way. So you can remember it in this way with the hyphenated adjectives as well. A 7-day trip, a 5-year loan, a 1-hour class, a 2-person tent. This is a really common one for tents. You can have a 2-person tent, a 4-person tent, etc. A 4-door car, a 12-hour shift, a 30-year loan, a 45-minute class, a 26-mile run, a 100-hour course. Of course, with all of these, you can also phrase it in a different way. You can say, I worked for 12 hours, or my shift was 12 hours. But this is useful in a lot of situations where you use a different sentence structure. For example, if I add a lot of other information, it could be better to use this phrase here. I could say, my work finally decided to change our 12-hour shifts to 10-hour shifts. So if you say that something like, my work finally decided to change my shift, which was 12 hours, to be a shift that is 10 hours. Like, you would have to make it a lot wordier if you wanted to include the same information. And so when you're having a complex sentence like that, it makes more sense to say it in this way. Non-stop flight. That's a really good one. Exactly. Non-stop is a good hyphenated adjective, compound adjective. A 120 dolphin aquarium. Yes, exactly. Exactly. So try to make an example of this if you put a number plus a noun, and that is describing another noun. So number, 7. Noun, day. So you put the thing that we're counting, and then you put another noun. What is the thing that we are describing? So 7, we're counting 7 days. Those 7 days are describing how long the trip was. We have the number 5, how many, we're counting 5 years. Those 5 years describe how long the loan is for. How many, 1, how many, what, 1 hour. 1 hour is describing the duration of the class. 2 is the number, 2 people, but because we don't make anything plural, we're going to say 2-person instead of 2 people. You might hear someone say, I'm a one-man woman. This is like, I am monogamous. I'm a one-woman man. A 5-day work week. Yes, it's very useful now in the context of people mentioning a 35-hour work week, a 5-day work week, in the context of talking about work weeks and how many hours or days. This is a really useful structure. I would say, yeah, linguistically, I would have to look into that, Joelle. From my perspective, it's because it's acting like an adjective because we're not using it as a noun. It is a noun, but we're not using it as a noun in the sentence. In the same way that for example, kitchen is a noun, right? But in English, we can also use it to describe a table, a kitchen table. If I make kitchen table plural, I'm going to say we have 2 kitchen tables, and so kitchen goes untouched. So I would say when we're using a noun in this way, like as something describing the other thing, we keep it singular, which I know is confusing because we're saying that there are multiple of the noun, but yeah, I'm not sure. I will have to see if there's like another linguistic reason, but to my mind, that's what it is. Usually we have a 65-minute class with Maggie, our English teacher, on Saturdays. True, very precise. 65 minutes. Okay, there are other fun ones that we can do. This is something that I like to do. I did this with my students in class. So, one of the most common noun adjective compounds. So, we have different types of compounds. We can have number plus noun. In this case, we can also have noun plus adjective compound. One of the most common ones of those is when we have an adjective, or when we have a noun, sorry, plus the word free. So for example, sugar free. Or I have an image here of cruelty free. So sugar free, cruelty free. How do you want to live your life? Free of what? I can say, I want a cruelty-free life. What is something like a noun that you do not want in your life? I want a cruelty-free life. A job-free life. Yeah, that's a good example. I want a job-free life. I want to live my life tax-free. Exactly. I want a tax-free life. Nice. I like how we all went in the same direction, job-free and tax-free. I guess if you're job-free, you probably are tax-free as well. That could be a good, maybe combination. I want a clown-free life, a life free of clowns. This one that Sylvia said is very common, stress-free. I want a stress-free life. I want a stress-free life. So you can tell me what kind of life do you want, but also what kind of world should we live in? Should we live in a cruelty-free world? A job-free world? I want an asshole-free life. Same. Hello, Marcelo. How are you doing today? So how should the world be? I know if anyone entered while I was saying I want an asshole-free life. We are practicing compound adjectives. This is a very common one. If you've seen sugar-free, gluten-free, stress-free, cruelty-free, a something-free life. Okay, if you had a sleep-free life, that would mean that you don't sleep. I would say like I want an endless sleep life or something. Maybe would be better if you wanted to use that one. Okay, war-free world and famine-free world. I like those options. Carefree or carefree? That's a good question. So you'll notice that with some words that are very common and older, they do not use the hyphen all the time. Some of them we use as a compound adjective, but it's all together. So the word carefree is better to say all together like one word and not with the hyphen. This happens in a lot of cases in English, like, for example, the word coworker at first started like this, co-worker, and it always had a hyphen because it wasn't really fully adopted into the language. It was kind of like a new word. But over time, it became just so common to be used that we use it without the hyphen, like all together. I want a flu-free life right now. Nice. Wait, I want a cough-free, a cough-free live class. Okay, so I have a different one that we can look at. Okay, so these are all related to describing personality. So I thought it would be like an interesting vocabulary list to look at because some of these maybe you've heard before. Maybe you know one that's like similar or includes one of the same words but not the other. So in this case, with vocabulary related to personality, notice here that all of the words on the right, we have different ways to talk about personality, but these ones have a body part or another noun, and you add the ed to the end. So you have a mind and then absent-minded, head, big-headed, skin, thick-skinned, heart, light-hearted. We also have kind-hearted, and we can use some of these words in different combinations, but I'm going to go through them, and if you can think of an example that comes to mind with any of them, definitely drop an example. So the first one, this is a really good one. If you are a Spanish speaker, there's the word disperso. So, ando muy dispersa estos días, which is always the case for me. That is one way that we can say this is absent-minded. So if someone is not very focused and they are more forgetful, that person is absent-minded. It's like their mind is not here with us, it's in a different place. Professors are often caricatured as absent-minded people. You could say, yeah, her behavior, like she's acting really absent-minded. She is the most absent-minded person I've ever met. She loses her keys every day. That would be absent-minded. I don't know if any of you here are team absent-minded. But you also might have heard other words with this minded, like open-minded, right? Or closed-minded. So this word minded is used in hyphenated adjectives. Another one is bad-tempered. If someone is bad-tempered, they are easily annoyed or grumpy. I've also seen short-tempered because if a person has a short temper, that means that they are very impatient, like they get angry quickly. For example, Fiona can be very bad-tempered when she's hungry. I don't know, I could also identify as Fiona. He is absent-minded when studying. Yeah, I would say he's absent-minded when studying grammar is perfect, or when studying grammar of the language could be as well. Yeah, I would say just grammar would be perfect there. Throughout my wages and salary class, I'm very often absent-minded. Yes. Pavio curto in Portuguese is bad-tempered. When I read books, I'm absent-minded. Okay. For me, depends on the content of the book. Charmin's light-hearted enough to drive our interest into the class. Nice. Yeah, light-hearted is happy and cheerful. This is someone who is optimistic, like George was an optimistic and light-hearted young man. You could say that someone's sense of humor is light-hearted. It's like the opposite of if someone has like really dark humor or is very cynical, for example. He was rather absent-minded and drove into a tree. Luckily, no one got hurt. Nice. Another one on the list here is big-headed. We use this in different ways to say that a person thinks that he or she is more important or clever than others or is arrogant. For instance, the main character in the novel is shown as a big-headed and pompous person. That is like a snob or someone who thinks they're better than others. You could also use this as a noun as well, the word head. Obviously, it's the head on your body, but you can say, ever since Joseph got the new job, he's really gotten a big head. So if someone gets a big head, that means that they start to think that they are the best thing since sliced bread, as we say. That's very North American. They start to think that they're more important than other people. Like, oh, he has a big head now. Mr. Trump is obviously the essence of a big-headed person. Confirmed. Then we have big mouth. That's a really good one. If someone has a big mouth, it means that that person tells other people's secrets. So if someone has a big mouth, yeah, like you can't tell them things because they tell it to everyone else. You could be like, why does she have such a big mouth? I thought that I could trust her with my secret, but she told the whole class. Or it could also be like you're in class and there's that one kid who's like, hey, teacher, did you forget to give us homework? And all the other kids say, oh my God, like, why would you say that? You have such a big mouth. It's like the one who talks too much and tells gossip or get other people in trouble. Thick-headed, okay. That could be like if someone is thick-headed, they're dense in the sense that it's difficult to get through to them. They could be calling you a little bit stubborn, and like the opposite of easygoing, like you're not really trying to understand them. It's difficult to get their point across to you if you're thick-headed. We also have simple-minded, which is when someone understands things in a simple, limited way. Anna is a naive, simple-minded person because she thinks her problems will go away just like that. So yeah, if someone's simple-minded, they are not looking beyond the very basic level of understanding. It's kind of like saying someone's not very intelligent because they're only seeing what's on the surface. They're not really critically thinking. Thin-skinned and thick-skinned are like opposites. If any of you have heard people say that this generation is so fragile, or like in Chile, they say la generación de cristal. Uh, in English, we would say that someone is thin-skinned if they are easily insulted and offended. On the opposite side, if someone is thick-skinned, they are more difficult to offend because they have more of a layer around them. So even if you insult them, they're like, I don't care, I'm thick-skinned. The last one here is tight-fisted. This is similar in a lot of countries to refer to those people who do not want to share their money with other people. They want to keep what they have and not be generous. They are perhaps stingy or cheap. That would be someone that is tight-fisted. When it comes to polyglots, she's very big-headed. Is that a specific person or just like polyglots in general? Let me see here. Yeah, I think close-fisted is the same as tight-fisted, but tight-fisted, in my experience, is more common. But yeah, maybe depends country to country. But yeah, close-fisted and tight-fisted would be the same thing. She's a tough cookie. That's a good phrase too. You're a simple-minded guy. Okay, I have here some different sentences that I want you to complete with your idea. So, finish the sentences with your ideas, and I'll help you if you don't know what any of the words mean. I'm thin-skinned. Why would I share my money? I would say that you're tight-fisted if you don't share your money. But maybe you're tight-fisted and also thin-skinned. My husband is always tight-fisted. Okay. That can be, I guess, a good strategy for saving money. Maybe before we continue, does anyone have any other examples? Do you identify as any of these adjectives? Are you light-hearted, big-headed, simple-minded? I'm gonna think about, in my situation, I would say I'm not really bad-tempered unless I see like unless I'm very hungry or have a strong feeling of injustice maybe. Um Other than that, I try to be a light-hearted person. I would say that I am not so thin-skinned. You cannot really be that thin-skinned online because people send you all kinds of crazy stuff. I would say I'm not tight-fisted either. I'm not tight-fisted, but if we go out, I'm not paying the bill, not even my part is a good one. Laid back people tend to be more easygoing and careless. True. I'm a very absent-minded person. Same. What happens when you're bad-tempered? I would say, to be honest, I think I'm more of a resentful person. So if I feel like bad-tempered, I don't normally yell at the person that I'm mad at. I just get really angry thinking about the situation and ruminating. I'm more of that type of person, which is kind of not a good thing because I think when you're feeling resentful, you are the only one hurting in that case. I'm not tight-fisted, I'm a freeloader. Okay, yeah. I'm the Kingslayer. Okay, I have here finish the sentences with your ideas. So we had one that was good with laid back people tend to. When men are tight-fisted, women will be bad-tempered. I mean, I guess it depends on the person and why are they being tight-fisted? You know, if I'm like, I need to go to the dentist and get a root canal, and your husband is like, no, woman, no root canal for you. I would be like, yeah, I think I would be bad-tempered in that situation. I don't know. Laid back people tend to take things lightly. True. Hello, Alex. Laid back. This is basically another way to say low maintenance, easygoing, a person who goes with the flow and is easy to get along with. The next one is you can tell that someone is tight-fisted when they do what? You can tell that someone is tight-fisted when they go to the bathroom every time it's time to pay the check at a restaurant. Have any of you guys ever experienced that? Like, I don't think it's ever happened to me, but it's kind of like a common trope that you go to a restaurant with your friends and there's always the one friend who goes to the bathroom when they bring the check. Carefree. Then we have good-tempered people are great at handling what? Great. Good-tempered people are great at handling, I'm thinking in customer service situation, maybe are great at handling high maintenance customers like we talked about before. The difference between confidence and big-headed people is that big-headed people feel they're the center of the universe. Okay, yeah, definitely. So it's like you can be confident without thinking that you are the center of the universe. You can tell when someone's tight-fisted when they resist spending money or when they cheap out on the presents. Yeah. Or when they send you things that they regifted and found in their house. I know one of my students this week sent me a video of a lady who instead of buying presents, she spent the year stealing items from her family members, and then for Christmas, she gave them back to the family members. And I just think, like, why not just make a card? If you feel tight-fisted or you don't have the money to spend, I think maybe it's better to just write a nice card instead of stealing from your family members. Hello, welcome. You can tell when someone's tight-fisted when they nag they don't have money. Good-tempered people are great at handling complaints. I came across an interesting and funny compound adjective. What was it? A little different question. How would you pronounce a puddle? Puddle. Puddle. We jumped in the puddle. It's similar to cuddle or subtle. These words are pronounced the same, the words subtle and puddle. I'm doing well. How are you guys doing today? Alex Ramirez, Mr. Big Shot. Alex Ramirez has a big head. No, I'm just kidding. the difference between self-confident people and big-headed people. We also have absent-minded people struggle with what? Good-tempered people are great at handling problems. The difference between self-confident people and big-headed people is the way they treat people around them. Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, sometimes I think big-headed people are really compensating for something, like they're not actually that confident. Like they're showing off because they have other things that they're insecure about. The last one here is an example of two-faced behavior. If someone is two-faced, they are fake. They act one way to your face and then they turn around and they act a different way behind your back. So that is two-faced behavior. Absent-minded people struggle with focusing for long periods. True. Yeah, British people might be like puddle, a puddle. I say a puddle, puddle. Yeah, but I guess it depends on there are so many different British accents that maybe I chose a different one from the one that you heard. Focusing on, yeah, so absent-minded people struggle with focusing on more than one thing at a time. An example of two-faced behavior was my last boss. Okay, what is the tea? What was your boss doing? If you guys have any gossip or tea, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'm just kidding. Nice. Yeah, some people say I'm a Gemini, and some people say that Geminis are two-faced. I think that that's an oversimplification. I don't think that we're completely two-faced, but every every sign has its downside. You could say Aries could be bad-tempered in some situations. Leos could be big-headed in some situations. Maybe Pisces could be thin-skinned in some situations. Yeah, so you could say the same about a lot of different people. The way politicians behave in front and behind the cameras is an example of two-faced behavior. True. Oh girl, that tea is so loaded that it'd kill your buzz. Okay, yeah. When it's not like fun tea, that's a different story. Okay, nice. I'm gonna just show you guys as kind of like a final thing to be aware of. We have different types of, I guess I'm a bit too simple-minded in order to recognize two-faced behavior. Maybe that was an advantage. Yeah, I personally don't feel like I have two-faced behavior, but I do feel like I change my personality. Like, I think some people are always the same no matter who they're surrounded by. And I feel like I kind of adjust my personality based on who I'm talking to. So that, some people could say that, oh, that's two-faced behavior. I do have tea about my boss. Okay. What's the situation with your boss? Here are just some different examples of compound adjectives. My goal is for you to pay attention more to them, and with time it will become more natural, but we need to get used to the logic of English where it might be different from the logic in your native language. We are able in English to add multiple words before a noun in order to describe that noun, and that is kind of interesting. I like that way of saying that I'm a chameleon. Yes, I'm not two-faced, I'm a chameleon. Do you reckon you have a different personality when you're speaking Spanish? Yes, I think that a little bit I do. I also think that because I speak Spanish in Chile, it's cultural as well. Like the things that I say. Okay, I will say this. This is how I feel about having a different personality when you're speaking a different language. I feel like on the whole, I am the same person in essence. Like, I'm a person who's relatively lighthearted and likes to make a lot of jokes and also likes to talk to people and like get to know people and talk about like different topics. Like, I feel like my interest when I go to a party and interact with people, I have like a similar existence in English and Spanish, but then the actual content of what I say is different. So my like type of humor, maybe in English versus in Spanish, like the things that it occurs to me to say, the references or the type of jokes are a little bit different, but like my essence as a person is the same. Does that make sense? I feel like in my English, like US English personality, I am a little bit more like, I don't know, goofy maybe? In Spanish, I feel like Chilean humor is not as goofy. It's more kind of like witty. So I would say that just the vibe is a little bit different. Do you guys feel the same when you speak in a different language? I don't think I have a different personality, but it's like the things that it occurs to me to say. Before I forget it, yesterday you talked about a fascinating topic when discussing your exercise catch the phrase and about how we understand language. What was I saying? I'm so absent-minded. Okay, yeah. Yesterday, and I can remove this. I feel like now I'm just saying other things. I would say the human is the thing that is the humor, exactly. Yeah. And I think also I was talking about this to students recently, like if it's really complicated to have a sense of humor in a different language that you're learning. And my idea was that there are different levels of humor and complexity. So like even babies have humor, right? If you go peekaboo, the baby's like, and I think when you're learning a language, we start with a more basic sense of humor that is easier to understand because humor is kind of on the edge of understanding, right? If I tell you a joke in your native language, that's a very low effort joke and very like basic, and maybe you've heard it before, like a dad joke, you're probably not going to laugh or think it's very funny. But if you hear the same in English and it was something that you kind of like just understood or it makes sense to you, but it's not something you've heard before, you're going to find it a lot funnier because you don't have that like, adult brain in your native language where it's a tired old joke that you've heard repeated multiple times. So I think that it takes time to develop like a more complex sense of humor in a different language, but we all have at least a base of humor. And what you were saying, Joao, about the class yesterday, if I remember correctly, and if it was something else, let me know. But basically, we were in a class and people were saying that they felt that English, when it's spoken, is not like that, it's really difficult to understand compared to when it's written. And I made the point that this is kind of true of all of our languages, not only English. Obviously, English is more complicated with like through, though, thorough, all of that. But if you think about the way that when a native speaker is speaking in your language, if you take like a little piece from an interview and they're like, oh, yeah, or something like that, your brain is able to kind of fill in the gaps because you're so used to the context of what people say in your native language that that helps you a lot. So we can never expect in everyday life for people to speak 100% clearly and really enunciate every word. That's never going to happen. Um, Maybe in very specific situations, but in order to practice, we have to work on understanding through context and also understanding these like really messy bits of connected speech and just practice listening to them. So I don't know if that's the topic that you meant, Joelle, that I should make a video about, but let me know. And thank you, Luis. Yeah, I've noticed that like in Spanish, I realized that my Spanish was getting better when I was watching a stand-up comedy show. They always have the Festival de Viña different comedians. In the past, I felt like if I understood, there were so many jokes that I didn't understand that if there was any joke that I understood, I was like, oh, ha ha ha. Now I feel like there are jokes that I understand that I think are funny and other ones that I don't think are funny. And so I think that that is like a development for me. But for instance, in German, I see like really funny video of animals, and I think it's funny because I don't understand much more than that. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that would be a good topic for a full YouTube video for sure. Why native speaker I can understand when you talk. Well, teachers, we do something like there a lot of teachers, we purposefully speak with less connected speech so that students can understand us better. So that's something that I do when I teach. I try to use some connected speech and still talk in a way how I normally do, but I definitely make an effort to be understood. It's because when you guys hear someone just telling a really fast story, they're not paying attention to how they sound to you. And so that makes it difficult to understand someone when they are not able to control and understand how they sound. Teachers, we are more aware of this, so a lot of us can kind of like control and pay attention to how we sound so that more people can understand. And we can even change the level, right? It's like this is the more beginner level of English. And then I can kind of make it a little bit more difficult if you understand some, but not everything. And then if you're more like an upper intermediate student, I might start talking like this. But then if I'm just talking to my mom or my sister, I could just talk like this. So we kind of can turn the level of how we speak. I think so. I don't know. At least like people that are teachers or just like very used to speaking to non-native speakers. Do Americans care about foreign accents in English? I do not. I think that a lot of Americans do not. I'm not going to say everyone because I see videos of like xenophobic people that I think here's the thing. There are different types when it comes to caring. There are people who don't care because they're very used to foreign accents. The United States has a lot of immigrants, so we have a lot of people that are used to speaking with immigrants. That was my case. Like, it was always normal for me to hear people with accents because we have so many immigrants in the cities. Then there are people that are like xenophobic and terrible, and they'll be rude to someone that has an accent. Luckily, I don't think that's the majority. I know it looks like it's getting more common. Hopefully it doesn't. But there are also people in the middle that have subconscious bias. So there are people where if you say, hey, you treat people differently because they speak a different language, they'll say, no, me? I don't think so. But if you look at their behavior, they might make assumptions because they don't have the experience of of learning a language. They might make an assumption someone understands less than they really do, for example. And I think that there are people that have this like subconscious bias, specifically people that don't have the experience learning another language. Because I think if you do have an experience learning another language, you understand that if someone has an accent, it doesn't mean that they don't know things. So, yeah, I feel like it depends on the person. To be honest, the US is one of the biggest, like in terms of population, one of the biggest countries. So it's really difficult to say like all people in the US or all people in China or all people in India believe this, but that's my experience. There are people that are like straight up assholes, there are people that are nice, and then there are people that have some unconscious biases that they should work through. I know nothing about Spanish, but you being a teacher must know about English that other natives don't. Things about English that I never reflected on before becoming a teacher. Okay, there are a lot of things like that. One that I think about a lot is that my grandma one time asked me, "What's the hardest part for people to like understand about English?" And I told her phrasal verbs. And she told me, like, what are phrasal verbs? And I said, Grandma, when we say turn off the light, it's different from just the word turn when we say turn off. She was like, wow, I never thought about that. And so that's interesting. You guys all learn phrasal verbs in the way that you are like learning them as a rule or like something from a book. But for native English speakers, we never have a class about phrasal verbs. We never need to learn phrasal verbs like a separate thing because they are so integrated into the language that we don't realize, like, oh, for a learner, that is confusing, that when this word is by itself, it means one thing, and with other words, it has different meanings. So that's one thing, like, before you start teaching English, you don't realize because in my mind, if someone's like, what kind of things are hard for someone, I would imagine really long, complicated words. But really, especially if you're teaching someone whose native language is like Spanish, the long, complicated words are more similar to Spanish, usually. It's the phrasal verbs and the verbs that have like Germanic roots, which is all of the most common verbs that are more difficult for Spanish speakers. So that's one thing. Like the things that were hard for me in school are not the things that are hard for an English learner from a different country. Yeah, true. With prepositions, like the high frequency prepositions. I also think this is a good point, silly sausage, when people start talking louder when they think you have an accent. Yes, that's really annoying. I think people don't understand how to and this happened to me also where I was talking to someone and they noticed that I had an accent, but the beginning of the conversation, he was talking to me like normally, and I understood everything, and I was responding, and then I said something where it was more obvious I had an accent, and then he said, "Oh, do you understand me?" I was like, "We've been speaking for the past 5 minutes. Like, why? No, now automatically I don't understand you anymore." Like, I think some people don't understand how like languages work. Um, and hello. Yeah, my name is Maggie. Hi. Hi, Lauren. How are you doing? How's it going? Um, but yeah, I think that's really obnoxious because whenever people don't understand in English, it's usually they don't understand the connected speech and not because you should scream in their face. That's not usually a good idea. But yeah, hi. Good topic, I think, for a video that about understanding connected speech. And yeah, I don't know if I had anything else to add today. Thank you guys for the fire emojis. I appreciate it. Yeah, maybe if you have not seen it yet on my YouTube channel, I posted a video that has a listening exercise with connected speech. So check it out on my YouTube channel and it will be really good listening practice for you. It's Charm English Maggie on YouTube. And yeah, nice to have you guys here. If it's your first time, welcome. If you are always here, also welcome. We're going to end the class here, but check out, I'm not sure where I can find similar exercises. Yeah, I think there is, if you, in the caption of the video, I included the YouTube of this one woman who has a couple other videos like that in the caption of the video. Maybe I should make more. It took me a long time, but now I think I understand how to make it hopefully a little bit faster. Of course. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Take care, everyone, and see you next time. Have a good day, everyone. Take care. Bye bye. Happy weekend.